My sister asked me to transfer $8,000 to her. When I refused, she threw hot coffee on me, yelling, "Get out of the house, you leech." To my shock, my parents supported her. I couldn't control my laughter. She asked, "Why are you laughing?" Then I opened my laptop and suddenly their faces turned pale. The sound of shattering glass changed everything. One moment, I was in my own home, and the next, my own sister was demanding I leave. My parents sat there, silent, as if they hadn't been living under my roof, rent-free, for years. But that was just the beginning, because what started as a betrayal over a house led me to uncover a truth so dark it would destroy my entire family, and I had proof. Now tell me, what would you do if you found out your family had been lying to you your whole life? You need to leave, Claire, tonight. I let out a short, disbelieving laugh, bending down to grab a handful of paper towels to clean up the mess. "Excuse me," I said, my voice eerily calm. My parents sat on the couch, not meeting my eyes. My mother's hands were wringing in her lap, her lips pressed into a thin line, like she was trying to hold back tears. My father, usually the one to speak up, was suddenly deeply fascinated by the pattern on the rug beneath his feet. "You can't just barge in here and demand I leave my own house," I continued, tossing the damp paper towels into the trash. "We've discussed this," Megan said, her voice laced with the self-righteousness I had come to hate. "As a family." I scoffed. "A family discussion? Funny. I don't recall being a part of it." Megan lifted her chin. "Because you wouldn't listen. You never listen. You've had it too easy for too long. Claire living here, working from home, while the rest of us struggle." A slow, cold realization crawled through me. I glanced at my parents again, hoping, praying that one of them would snap out of this madness, tell Megan she was being ridiculous. But they didn't. Instead, my mother's voice was soft, pleading. "Honey, we just think." "You think what?" I snapped, my patience unraveling. "That I owe you something? That it's my job to provide for all of you?" My father cleared his throat, still not looking at me. "Megan needs stability right now. She's going through a lot after the divorce. And you've always been so independent," my mother added, as if that somehow justified what they were doing. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. 5 years. 5 years of supporting them, of changing my life to accommodate their needs. When they lost their home, I opened mine. When they struggled financially, I never once asked them for rent. I had let them stay here, rent-free, while I worked late nights and pulled extra contracts to keep everything afloat. And this was how they repaid me? "You can't be serious," I whispered. Megan's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smirk, but close enough to make my blood boil. "You'll figure it out, Claire. You're smart. You're successful. You don't need this house." I shook my head, my hands trembling with rage. "Where exactly am I supposed to go, Megan?" "That's not our problem," she said with a shrug. Something in me snapped. I reached for my phone, unlocking it with quick, practiced fingers. "Fine," I said. "Then, I'm calling the police. This is my property." Dad finally looked up. Actually, his voice was quiet but firm. "We spoke to a lawyer." A chill ran down my spine. "What?" He hesitated. "Since we've been living here for over a year, you can't legally evict us without going through formal eviction proceedings, but you can leave voluntarily." The air was sucked from my lungs. They had planned this. This wasn't some impulsive decision. They had plotted this for weeks, maybe even months, all while eating my food and sleeping under my roof. While I had been working late into the night, trying to make sure we all had a place to live, they had been scheming to take it from me. "This is insane," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. Megan stepped closer, a victorious glint in her eyes. "It's for the best, Claire. We need this house. And frankly, you could use a dose of humility." I let out a breath and steadied myself. "Fine," I said, surprising even myself with my calm tone. "I'll go." A flicker of surprise crossed Megan's face, but she recovered quickly. "Good," she said. "We'll help you pack." I met her gaze, letting the silence stretch between us until the smugness in her expression wavered. "Like hell you will," I said, stepping past her. I walked to my bedroom, their voices fading behind me, my hands steady as I pulled out my laptop bag and started packing my essentials. They thought they had won. They thought they had outplayed me, but they forgot one important thing. Lessons go both ways, and I intended to make damn sure they learned theirs. Ethan's spare bedroom felt like a prison cell, no matter how much he tried to make me feel at home. The walls were bare, the air heavy with the scent of fresh laundry detergent, and the desk he'd set up for me felt impersonal, temporary, just like my entire existence right now. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my laptop screen, but my thoughts were too loud to focus on the work in front of me. The betrayal replayed in my mind on an endless loop. My family, my own family, had blindsided me, stolen my home, and tossed me out like I was nothing. "You're grinding your teeth again." I glanced up to see Ethan leaning against the doorway, a steaming cup of coffee in his hand. He offered it to me with a look that said, "Drink this before you set the world on fire." I took it, the heat grounding me, but the rage didn't subside. "I don't even know where to start." Start with the truth," he said simply, sitting across from me. "Remember when they first moved in? You were so excited, talking about how it would bring you all closer." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Yeah, that lasted about 2 weeks." I set the mug down and pulled up my banking app, scrolling through transactions. My fingers tightened on the trackpad. There, multiple transfers. Small amounts, each just under $5,000, too small to trigger alerts. But added together? I did the math in my head. $47,000. My stomach churned. I didn't even need to ask who was behind it. Megan had always been clever with other people's money. "Found something?" Ethan asked, his tone cautious. "Oh, yeah." I turned the screen toward him. "Megan's been draining my accounts. Little by little. $47 in 3 months. Ethan let out a low whistle. "That's not just stealing. That's calculated. She's always been like this," I muttered, opening another file. "When we were kids, she used to break my things and then convince my parents it was my fault. When I got my first big design job, she told everyone I only got it because I was flirting with the boss. Some things never change." "Oh, it gets worse." I opened my emails. "She's been contacting my clients. My biggest ones. Undermining me. Spreading lies about how I'm mentally unstable." Ethan sat up straighter. "That's low. Even for her. She wants to take over my business," I said, my voice tight with fury. "She's positioning herself as the reliable alternative. And my parents, they're just sitting back, letting her do it." Another buzz from my phone. "Mom." I declined the call without hesitation. The third one today. Each voicemail was the same. A fake plea to come home so we could work this out as a family. "Still trying to manipulate you?" Ethan asked. "They're trying to control the narrative," I said, standing up and pacing the small room. "They probably know I'm onto them, and they think they can guilt me into playing along. You're ignoring them, right?" I let out a sharp exhale. "Oh, I'm ignoring them, but I'm not done with them." Ethan gave me a wary look. "Claire." "No, don't Claire me," I said, shaking my head. "I'm not looking for revenge, Ethan. This is justice." He studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "What are you thinking?" "I moved my assets this morning. New bank, new accounts. My money is safe." "Good, that's smart. But Megan," I met his gaze. "She doesn't know I know. So, I'm gonna let her think she's winning. And when she finally tries to make her final move, I'm going to crush her." Ethan ran a hand over his face. "I have a bad feeling about this." "You don't understand," I said, pulling up another folder. "Look at this." I showed him my work logs, the security reports from my system. "She's been accessing my work files, my client contracts, my designs, everything." Ethan stiffened. "How did she even get in?" "She must have found a way to access my password manager before I left," I said, feeling the rage bubble up again. "She's not just trying to take my house. She's trying to replace me, and I let her stay under my roof for free." Ethan exhaled slowly. "You really think you can beat her at her own game?" I closed my laptop and stood up, a steely determination settling over me. "I don't think I can," I said, grabbing my jacket. "I know I can." They thought they'd won. They thought I was broken, defeated. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. The letter arrived on a dull Thursday morning, buried beneath a pile of junk mail and bills Ethan had stacked on the kitchen counter. At first, I almost didn't open it. I wasn't expecting anything important, not anymore. My family had already taken what mattered. But then I saw the sender, Gregory Whitmore and Associates. My breath hitched. "Uncle Greg." The paper felt heavy in my hands, like it carried more than just words. I tore it open and unfolded the documents inside, my eyes scanning rapidly until one sentence nearly knocked the air from my lungs. "Uncle Greg left me his house." I read it again. It didn't change. The Victorian on Maple Street, the one my parents always wanted, the one Megan had always said should belong to someone who knew how to use it properly, was mine. A separate letter written in my uncle's neat, deliberate handwriting was attached. "Claire, if you're reading this, then I imagine your family has already shown their true colors. I tried to warn you about Megan years ago, but I know how hard it is to see the truth when you love someone. So I'm giving you a choice, one that she and your parents cannot touch. This house is yours. Not the family's, not Megan's, yours. Do with it what you will, but don't let them take anything else from you. Choose wisely. Uncle Greg." I sat there, gripping the letter, my heart pounding in my ears. He'd known. He'd always known. My phone buzzed. "Dad." The message was short, almost casual. "Family trust meeting tomorrow. Your presence is required." Required. I let out a hollow laugh. They were panicking. They thought they'd box me in. but they didn't know I had something they couldn't touch. Ethan walked in, pausing at the sight of me gripping the letter. "You okay?" I smiled. I just inherited a house. I should have known walking back into my own home would feel like stepping into enemy territory. The living room had changed. My furniture was still there, but the details were wrong. The pictures of me gone. In their place were Megan's carefully curated memories. Her smiling face at some vacation I wasn't invited to. A framed print of her holding a welcome home sign for herself. Disgust curled in my stomach as I moved toward my office. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Megan was already there, waiting. She sat behind my desk like she owned the place, my old laptop resting beneath her fingers. That same smirk stretched across her lips, the one she'd worn the night she kicked me out. "Looking for this?" She tapped the laptop. I stepped inside, keeping my voice level. "You're seriously this desperate?" Megan tilted her head, feigning sympathy. "Claire, you need help. You're unraveling. Mom and Dad are really worried." My mother appeared in the doorway behind me, wringing her hands. "Honey, we just think, maybe you should take some time, clear your head. We all just want what's best for you." Dad followed, silent but present, as if his mere existence validated whatever nonsense they were spewing. I laughed. Actually laughed. "You're gaslighting me." "Gaslighting?" Megan repeated, her tone mocking. "Claire, you've been acting erratic. You've always been high-strung, but lately, it's concerning." I narrowed my eyes. "Try again, Megan. I know what you've been doing." She sighed dramatically. "All right, fine. Since you're so obsessed with playing detective, let me make this easy for you." She slid a stack of papers across my desk. I stared at the title. "Petition for Emergency Conservatorship." My mouth went dry. Megan leaned forward, eyes gleaming with victory. "We've already spoken to doctors. 3 different mental health professionals have reviewed your recent behavior. The paranoia, the delusions, the threats, and they agree you're unstable. The hearing is in 2 days. Once it's finalized, you won't be able to access your accounts, your business, or anything without my permission." My vision blurred at the edges. They weren't just stealing my house. They were trying to erase me. Mom took a step forward, her voice gentle. "This is for your own good, sweetheart. We just want to help." "Help." I echoed the word like poison on my tongue. Megan sat back, satisfied. "Sign the papers now, and we can make this easy. You walk away quietly, and we'll make sure you're taken care of. Fight it? Well," she shrugged. "You know how these things go." I stared at them. My family. They had taken everything, and now they wanted me to go down quietly. A slow, eerie calm settled over me. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder of my own. Megan frowned. "What's that?" I tossed it onto the desk. "Bank statements. Client emails. Screenshots of your little attempts to replace me. Oh, and security logs proving you access my files without permission." The smirk slipped from her face. Dad cleared his throat. "Claire." I cut him off. "And let's not forget the $47,000 you siphoned from my accounts, Megan. You're good at stealing, but not at covering your tracks." Silence. Mom went pale. Megan's fingers curled into fists. "You're bluffing." I smiled. "Am I?" She reached for the papers, flipping through them, her breath coming faster. "Here's how this is going to go," I said, my voice steady. "You drop this conservatorship nonsense. You don't fight me for my house, my business, or anything else. You let me walk away. Or," I pulled out my phone. "Or, I send all of this to the authorities. Every single one of my clients, and, oh, let's not forget the news." The color drained from Megan's face. "You think you're untouchable," I whispered, stepping closer. "But you forgot something, Megan. I know exactly how you operate, and I've learned from the best." The room was dead silent. Megan's breath hitched, her nails digging into the desk. "Your choice," I said, "but you better decide fast." For the first time, Megan looked afraid. The Victorian loomed before me, its dark windows reflecting the pale moonlight like hollow eyes watching my every move. Uncle Greg's house. The one they all wanted. The one he left to me. They had no choice but to come here. I made sure of that. The deal was simple. Either they meet me here, or everything I had on them goes public. I stepped inside, the hardwood floors creaking beneath my boots. The study door was open, and inside, my family sat waiting. Megan behind Uncle Greg's desk, as if she belonged there. Mom and Dad flanked her like loyal soldiers, their faces drawn tight. I closed the door behind me. "I assume you read my terms." Megan smirked, but it was weaker this time, strained at the edges. "Oh, we got your message loud and clear, Claire. You've certainly escalated things." "I learned from the best," I said coolly, stepping closer. "Now, let's stop pretending this is about the house. You've been desperate since Uncle Greg's will came out. What is it you don't want me to find?" Megan let out a dramatic sigh and reached into the desk drawer. She pulled out a letter, aged and yellowed at the edges. "Uncle Greg left this for you," she said, sliding it across the desk. "Read it carefully." My pulse thundered in my ears as I grabbed it. The moment my eyes landed on the first sentence, my breath caught. "Claire, if you're reading this, then the truth has come to light. The truth about Jonathan." I froze. Jonathan. My Jonathan. The man I had planned to marry. The man I had grieved for years after his tragic car accident. I swallowed hard and kept reading. "Your family never told you the full story about his death. You deserve to know what really happened that night." My head snapped up. "What is this?" My voice was barely above a whisper. No one spoke. My fingers gripped the paper so tightly, it nearly tore. "Jonathan died in an accident. A car accident. He lost control in the rain. That's what happened." Dad exhaled sharply. Mom shut her eyes. Megan just watched, something like pity flashing across her face. I turned to my father. "Say something." He looked down at his hands, then finally spoke. "Jonathan found out," he murmured, "about the money, the tax fraud. He was going to turn us in." The world tilted. "What?" My voice cracked. "He found discrepancies in the business records," Dad continued, his voice hollow. "He confronted me about it. He said he was going to the authorities." A ringing noise filled my ears. "So, what happened? What the hell did you do?" Mom flinched. "We just wanted to talk to him, sweetheart. Just to make him understand what was at stake." "Talk to him?" My stomach twisted violently. "You expect me to believe that?" Dad rubbed his hands over his face, looking more exhausted than I had ever seen him. "It was raining that night. We met him near the old bridge outside of town. He was furious, saying we were criminals, that he wasn't going to let me drag you into this mess." A sick feeling clawed at my throat. "And then he turned to leave," Dad whispered, voice barely audible, "slipped on the wet road. The next second, he was over the edge." I took a step back, my entire body trembling. "No, that's not. He crashed his car." Dad shook his head. "That's the story we told the police. That's the story we had to tell. I'll burn my throat." I turned to Megan. "You knew?" She nodded slowly. "Uncle Greg found out. He threatened to expose everything unless they signed over assets to him. That's why they did it. That's why they've been desperate ever since he died. Without him to keep them in check, everything started unraveling." I couldn't breathe. My parents had stolen from me, betrayed me, but this was worse. They had destroyed my life long before they kicked me out of my house. Jonathan was dead because of him. I swallowed back the wave of nausea, threatening to take me down. My grief morphed into something darker, something harder. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about justice. I forced myself to meet their eyes. "You let me cry over him, mourn him, and you just let me believe it was an accident." Tears slipped down my mother's cheeks. "We thought it was the right thing to do. We thought." I held up a hand, cutting her off. "Stop, just stop." I turned back to Megan. "And what about you? You weren't even involved but you still tried to take me down with them." Megan let out a bitter laugh. "I didn't need to be involved. They did that all on their own. I just saw an opportunity and took it." The disgust in my chest burned hotter. I took a shaky breath. "This ends now." Dad's head snapped up. "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone. I recorded this conversation. Every word. Every confession. Mom gasped. Megan's eyes widened. Dad shot to his feet. "Claire, you can't. You stole my home, my business, and now I find out you took Jonathan from me too." My grip on my phone tightened. "Watch me." I pressed send. Multiple files. Straight to the authorities. Mom let out a choked sob. Dad sank back into his chair, defeated. Megan, for once, looked genuinely terrified. "Claire," Mom whispered. "Please. We're still family." I stared at her, feeling nothing. "No," I said. "We're not." I turned on my heel and walked out of the Victorian, leaving them to face what they had done. Behind me, the house stood silent, watching. Justice was finally in motion. The news broke faster than I expected. By the time the morning sun streamed through Ethan's kitchen window, every major outlet had picked up the story. Headlines blared across my phone screen, each one more damning than the last. Mitchell family fraud scandal, tax evasion, embezzlement, and betrayal. Businesswoman Claire Mitchell exposes family's decade-long financial crimes. Fallen dynasty, the Mitchell family's darkest secrets unraveled. I stared at the words, feeling a strange sense of detachment. This was my family, my own flesh and blood, laid bare for the world to see. Ethan sat across from me, watching carefully. "You okay?" I exhaled slowly. "I don't know." He nodded toward my phone. "It's done, Claire. You did what you had to do." I glanced at the emails flooding my inbox. Messages from reporters, former clients, even people I barely remembered from college, all reaching out with some version of "I can't believe what you went through." But none of them mattered. Because today wasn't about words, it was about consequences. A sharp knock at the door made Ethan stand. I didn't move, already knowing who it would be. Through the peephole, a flash of navy blue confirmed it. Police officers. It's time, I murmured. By the time I arrived at Uncle Greg's house, sirens already lit up the street. Police officers swarmed the front yard, their presence turning the once pristine Victorian into the site of a public downfall. I stepped out of the car just as they brought my mother and father onto the porch, their hands cuffed behind their backs. Mom's face was streaked with tears, her carefully maintained composure shattered. "Claire, please." I met her desperate gaze and felt nothing. Dad said nothing at all, just stared at the ground, like a man who had known this day was coming for a long time. And then there was Megan. She thrashed in the officer's grip, her once impeccable blouse now wrinkled, her manicured nails digging into the cuffs as if she could claw her way out of this. "This is your fault," she screamed, twisting toward me. "You think you're better than us? You think you won?" I stepped forward, letting her fury crash against my silence. "Everything I did was for family." Megan spat, her voice raw. "For us. You're the selfish one, Claire. You always have been." I tilted my head. "Is that what you told yourself?" Her face twisted, her lips curling in frustration. You destroyed us." I inhaled deeply, letting her words sink in. And then, with quiet certainty, I replied, "No, Megan, you destroyed yourselves." I just turned on the lights so everyone could see it. She lunged for me, but the officers pulled her back. Her screams grew frantic, desperate. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't move. I had already won. Hours later, I stood in the study, the very room where my family had plotted to erase me. The house felt different now. Not haunted, but hollow. Like it had been waiting for this moment, waiting to shed its secrets. Ethan leaned against the doorway. "So, that's it." I turned, my gaze landing on the framed letter from Uncle Greg, still sitting on the desk. He had given me a choice, revenge or justice. I thought about that for a long time. Megan's final screams echoed in my mind. My mother's tear-streaked face. My father's silence. "I thought justice would feel different," I admitted. Ethan studied me. "Does it feel like enough?" I turned to the window, watching the last police car disappear down the street. The Mitchell name was in ruins. Their wealth was seized. Their lies were public. And me? I was finally free. I looked back at Ethan and gave the smallest of smiles. "Yeah, it does." Because this wasn't about winning. It was about surviving. 6 weeks later, I stood in the doorway of Uncle Greg's Victorian house, the keys cool in my palm. It still didn't feel real. The grand wooden staircase stretched before me, the high ceilings towering overhead. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the hardwood floor. This house, this legacy was mine now. Not because I had won, but because I had survived. I stepped inside, inhaling the scent of aged wood and dust. The echoes of my past whispered from the corners, the nights spent here as a child, the family dinners before everything had soured. And then there was Jonathan. I found the first photo in the study. It was buried in the bottom of Uncle Greg's desk drawer, hidden beneath stacks of old documents. My breath caught as I dusted it off. It was us. Jonathan and me, arms wrapped around each other at our engagement party. His smile was as bright as I remembered, his eyes full of life. Beneath it, another photo, Uncle Greg and Jonathan, deep in conversation at a family barbecue. I traced their faces, my throat tightening. Uncle Greg hadn't just known the truth. He had been helping Jonathan investigate. That's why he left me this house. Not as an escape, as a foundation. A folded letter sat beneath the photographs, marked with my name in Uncle Greg's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Claire, if you're reading this, then the truth has come to light." And it hurt, didn't it? The thing about truth is that it demands something of us. You have a choice now. What to do with the pain. I know you, kid. I know you'll want revenge. And you have every right to it. But let me tell you something I've learned after years of watching our family. The truth will hurt, but lies destroy. Some families are built from blood. Others, from ashes. You get to decide which one you want to build. Uncle Greg. I pressed the letter to my chest, feeling its weight settle in my heart. The Mitchell family was gone. Megan was behind bars. My parents' reputation shattered. The house I had fought for was mine, but I didn't feel like I had won. Winning meant there was something left to salvage. No, what I felt was something else. Something quieter, a new beginning. Instead of selling the house, I transformed it. The front parlor became a gallery space. The sunlit rooms upstairs turned into studios. The library? A space for workshops and community projects. I used the money seized from my family's accounts to fund it. A poetic kind of justice. The Jonathan Whitmore Foundation for Creative Healing was born. I focused on art therapy programs, especially for those who had nowhere else to turn. And in a particularly fitting twist, the foundation partnered with prison outreach programs, helping inmates process their pasts through creative expression. Megan's prison was one of the first to receive funding. Poetic, wasn't it? You really did it, Ethan said, standing beside me on opening day. You turned this place into something good. I looked around, watching as people wandered through the house, taking in the new purpose it held. I had to, I murmured. If I sold it, it would just be another victory for them. But this? This is something they can't take away from me. Ethan nudged me. Uncle Greg would be proud. I smiled, blinking away the sting behind my eyes. I hope so. Jonathan, too, he added softly. I inhaled deeply, looking around at the people who had come here not for money, not for power, but to heal. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had lost my family. I was building one. That night, after everyone had left, I stood in the study, my study now. The air smelled of fresh paint, of new beginnings. A blank canvas sat on the easel before me, waiting. For years, my life had been dictated by others, their greed, their betrayals, their expectations, but not anymore. This time, I was holding the brush. I dipped it into the paint, the first stroke slicing through the white like a new chapter being written. Some families were built from blood, others from ashes. And mine? Mine was built from hope.